Good evening, everybody. It's Sunday, August 2nd, and it's been quite a while since I've done any kind of garden update, and this is going to be my last opportunity to do this, possibly because we have Tropical Storm Isaias that is bearing down on us within about 24 hours. So I've spent a lot of time cleaning up the entire yard. That's why everything's been taken down. So I want to give you a walkthrough of my garden, show you how everything is looking at this point in the year, and then after the hurricane hits us, we can do a little review. We'll come back and see how everything held up. The first thing that you'll notice in my garden is that almost all of the tomatoes are gone. They have long since quit on me and pretty much given up production and given up the ghost. A lot of disease happens at this point in the year. But I do still have a few that are hanging in there by the skin of their teeth. This, of course, is the German lunchbox cherry tomato. They will still produce when it gets to be 93, 94 degrees with 70% humidity every single day. So these are still pumping out a small amount of tomatoes, but I've been fighting the leaf-footed bugs for them. They've really been doing a number on the tomatoes. The basil is still doing great, especially the ones that were grown as understory trees or understory plants underneath the tomatoes. They're staying nice and green. For some reason, my brandywine sodeth hasn't completely died, and it still has one tomato on it. So I'll let that ripen, but that might not be there after the storm. And then this is a variety, I believe it's Ozark Pink VF, and they are one of the few tomatoes that will produce when it's 95 degrees with crushing humidity. And it still has some tomatoes on it. These are a smaller slicing tomato, but as you can see, it's relatively disease-free for my climate. Usually all of my tomatoes are smoked by now. So this doesn't have the greatest tasting fruit by any means, and they're a smaller tomato at maybe 5 to 8 ounces, but to have any tomatoes right now is amazing. And then this is an Arkansas Traveler. I believe this is a parent to the Ozark Pink VF. So this does really well in heat and humidity, and these are the leaf-footed bugs that are just ravaging my tomatoes. They're just the worst. They're the reason why a lot of my tomatoes are gone, honestly. And then over here I have my Brandy Boy, which my original one got killed, but it's still hanging on. It's okay with disease. The back leaves are really beat up that don't get blasted with the sun, but the front leaves are pretty good. It probably won't survive the storm. As you can see, it's already getting pretty windy out here. But and it also probably won't set fruit, but it's a good looking plant. It's still healthy up top, so I'll let it go and see what it does. Amazingly enough, my cucumbers that I posted a video on how to grow parthenocarpic cucumbers, they're still hanging on and they look relatively okay, but all of the fruit pretty much got consumed by worms, so there's not much left. There's still a fruit here and there. But after the storm, I'm going to plant some younger plants, and as things cool down into September, I should get fruit set again, because these guys are looking pretty terribly beat up. My Beauregard sweet potatoes are doing fantastic. They are pretty much bulletproof. You don't have to do anything with them. They are great in hot, humid, rainy climates. I strongly suggest growing them. My hot and sweet banana peppers are all still doing well. I harvested the majority of them with the storm coming, and I also ran some fresh ties for Florida weaving, and that's holding them up pretty well. I don't think they'll survive the storm, but stranger things have happened. I planted a whole new bed of corn because my corn planting was kind of a disaster. I've never planted corn before, but what I learned is that you really can't plant corn in rows like this. You need to grow them in parallel rows so they cross-pollinate better. So all of my corn was pretty much a bust. None of it really formed. My jalapeno peppers are doing great still. My lipstick peppers are pretty much shot and looking yellow, so I'm probably going to cut them back and refresh them. I've done that before with great success, and I'll show you how to do that by linking to a video above. This was a dwarf tomato bed. They're all gone except for some cherry peppers on the very end, which you can see over here. They're hot cherries. Same thing with the next bed right here. Cherry peppers are still there, but all my dwarf tomatoes have been ripped out. They're all long gone. And my eggplant is doing very well, but I haven't really harvested a whole lot. I haven't really been in the mood for eggplant, so hopefully this survives the storm. And eggplant's pretty hardy, so I think it will probably survive, especially with this steel cage around it. Over here I have a volunteer sweet potato. I had sweet potato bed. I had sweet potatoes in this bed last year, so clearly I missed one, and it's come to life and made all new vines, so that's great. And then over here I have one more cucumber planting, but it's just been too hot and it's really beaten everything up, and there's just been worms galore. So I'm going to start new cucumbers and tomatoes in these beds right here. That's why I have this compost and this hardwood mulch. I'm going to refresh these beds and get them ready for my fall crop of tomatoes and cucumbers once the storm passes. And then, as you can see, I still have watermelon galore. I have watermelons forming everywhere, and they should weather the storm just fine for the most part. And these here are fig trees that I did not bother to try to bring into my garage. It's pretty full, and the reason why I didn't bring these fig trees in is because they're all either Smyrna varieties that aren't going to work out, or they are varieties left over from last year that I'm probably going to get rid of because they're just bad performers here. So everything here is pretty much on my cull list, so I don't really care if they get damaged by the storm. The one tree that I am going to keep that's not on the cull list is this one. This is a persistent capra fig, so it's a male fig and it doesn't give edible fruit. This is for pollination, which I'm going to experiment with in a year or two. So obviously I'm not too concerned with this getting any kind of damage because there's no fruit on it to damage. The east side earth beds are doing great. My banana tree just looks fantastic, and they're completely hurricane proof. That looks like something right out of the tropics. This is my Giambo Persimmon. There's not much to do there. That should weather the storm just fine. I am concerned about all of my espalier fig trees. They may lose some fruit, but they are all tied up pretty well. I have a feeling I probably will suffer some fruit losses, and unfortunately none of them have ripened any fruits yet. They're a little bit behind my container trees, so we'll have to hope and pray that these all do pretty well, because they sure look great, and I'd hate to have them be damaged because they're just chugging along perfectly. Then I have more bananas over here. Again, bananas are pretty much hurricane proof, so I am not concerned about these at all, and even if they get damaged, they're not going to fruit for me this year anyway. And then we have my Lila Avocado. This is probably going to get a little beat up in the storm, but it's a pretty fairly flexible and bendy tree. I've been watching it be whipped around all year, especially in the bad storms in the spring. And after setting literally hundreds of fruits through hand pollination, every single one of them dropped but one. So the tree just isn't mature enough to take fruits to maturity yet. I have one straggler that's right down here, and I have to hope that it does not get damaged and that it holds on, because that one little holdout right there is my only chance to have a ripe avocado off this tree this year. However, it's grown so incredibly well that I really think that next year I'm going to get a pretty decent harvest off of it. And then this is my Owari Satsuma from Stan the Citrus Man, and this second year tree is just loaded for bear. Absolutely incredible. I have more Satsumas on here than I know what to do with it. I can't believe the fruit set. And assuming none of these blow off, and these are pretty hurricane resistant trees since they grow them in Florida and they usually hold up pretty well, I'm not too concerned about this. I think it's going to do pretty well. There are dozens and dozens of fruits on this tree, and I'm just thrilled with how it looks. Now I'll take you to the side yard. Dale's super awesome bed is definitely going to have to be partially disassembled because that'll turn airborne in the storm for sure. Then over here I have my pawpaw trees. These pawpaws are pretty much completely protected between the sunshade and the fact that they're right up against this fence, and they're staked. So I'm not really concerned about them. There's not too much I can do about it. Then over here I have my raspberry, Tayberry, and Blackberry that I just showed you how to trellis in a recent video. And these are tied up, so I think they'll do okay. And since they're very bushy, they really sway around in the breeze pretty easily. So we're only supposed to get 50 to 60 mile an hour winds, and they should be able to hold up all right against that, especially with all the ties. Then on the side of the house here I have my Feijoa, aka pineapple guava, and this has a bunch of fruit on it, but they haven't really grew at all. So I'm not quite sure what's going on with that. They haven't gotten any bigger, and I don't know if they are going to. I don't know if it's just too young of a plant for them to ripen. but I don't think any storm damage is going to come to this plant since it's a very, very hardy bush. Then here in the front yard we have our dwarf Orinoco bananas ripening. That's as much as the flower formed in terms of the bunch, so maybe we'll get a dozen or two bananas off of there eventually if it holds up to the storm. And then next to that we have our Celeste Fig Tree, and this is still loaded with figs. They are everywhere, but this tree has formed a pretty lush canopy, and it's also very strongly lignified, so I think it's going to be just fine in the storm, and I don't have any concerns about that at all. I'm very happy to say that my sable palmetto has taken off like a rocket. It's doing great and pumping out all kinds of new growth, so hopefully that's well rooted enough that it'll hold up to the storm. And then in the front here I have all of my bananas, and they all look very great, so no complaints there. And now for the horrible part. I had to clean out this entire garage. I emptied everything out, got both vehicles in, and painstakingly put all of the fruit trees away. So in here are all of my higher value figs and my citrus, and as well as my seedlings, like my new crop of sunflowers and marigolds, and my new crop of tomatoes over here. And behind there I have some peppers and cucumbers that are pretty hard to make out, but they are down there. So as well as some additional fig cuttings. So I really need to protect everything in here. It is a humidity box in here though because of all this foliage. It is really brutally hot, so I have to leave all of the doors open as long as possible. The citrus is doing really well, so hopefully they won't suffer too much from being kept in a garage for basically a day and a half. And then in the covered area by my front door I have my medium value plants, and most of these are either my coffee trees or they are figs that I'm not ready to cull yet, but they aren't top priority for me. Same thing with over here. There's also some doubles in here, like I have my double of my Col de Dame Noir, my double of my Martinenca Ramada. They're really great figs and I don't want to see them get damaged. However, I already have very strong plants in ground and I don't need to protect the doubles as much. Alright, it's Tuesday morning, August 4th, and this is the aftermath of the storm. It's about 8:45 a.m. We just got power back a little while ago. I had the generator running to keep the fridge running for a little bit, but the storm was much worse than forecast. They really blew the forecast on this one. They basically showed the storm running up the Florida coast and then coming back over the open waters in between Georgia and the Carolinas, and then hitting in northern South Carolina. That did not happen. It pretty much missed the entire coast of Florida, so that never slowed the storm down. And instead of the 70 to 75 mile an hour tropical storm slash category 1 hurricane they forecast, it turned out to be an 85 plus mile an hour strong category 1 building to a category 2. So the damage was much more substantial and the wind noise was absolutely extreme. The good news is, aside from a missing shutter, there's no damage to the house, but there is significant damage to the yard. As you can see, all of my weed barrier is really ripped up, and while that's not really a big deal, it does take hours to replace. All of my fig trees that I left outside got blown over despite the fact I had them staked and tied to rebar. I think my Violet de Bordeaux tree is going to be a casualty of the storm. It got completely uprooted, and you know, I'm not all that mad about this because this tree has just been a dud the past 2.5 years I've had it. It's not doing what I want it to do. All of these trees got got blown over, but I should be able to just fix them by picking it up. Before the storm, I added another layer of string for the Florida weave, and I'm going to link to the video above for how I Florida weave, because this is how strong this is. It can take category 1 hurricanes, and it completely held up. All the peppers completely held up. They all look great. All of the fruit is still on there. It's pretty mind-blowing because all of my corn blew over, both of the old corn and a lot of my new corn. I'm going to have to try and hill it to try and save it, but a lot of it got blown over and is damaged. I'm also going to link to a video above on my string trellises because I want to show you how incredibly strong the string trellises are. Because the string trellises bend with the wind, they actually absorb a lot of the damage. So most of my tomatoes on here are a-okay. So some things got bent, like the top of this that wasn't staked, this got bent. But everything underneath the clips, like here the top got damaged, but under the clips, everything is completely fine. Same thing with all of these. They all look really good, and it's surprising. My brandy boy over here looks great, except the top broke off, but I'll be able to prune them off and it'll come right back. My cucumbers got pretty ravaged because the leaves are broader. They absorbed a lot of the storm. But these cucumbers weren't really doing all that well anyway. By far the biggest heartbreaker of the storm is my beautiful Lila Avocado, which was doing absolutely perfectly, got blown over. So it's partially uprooted. I'm not sure if I'm going to be able to fix it. It looks like the roots are still intact for the most part, so I might be able to put up a couple of T-posts and really brace it and pull it forward and hope that it'll settle back. I'm not sure, but it took a lot of damage. It is blown over, and I'm really upset about that. And what do I see here? My avocado is lying on the ground. That was the only one left on the Lila Avocado tree, so even if the tree does recover, it looks like we will not be having an avocado this year. My Owari Satsuma, on the other hand, looks really great. This took no damage at all, maybe because the avocado blocked a lot of the damage. Surprisingly, the east side earth bed looks good for the most part. My bananas took a lot of leaf damage. All of my figs that are in ground are completely fine. So I'm thankful for that, because I thought for sure there'd be a little bit of damage. There is none, despite a few figs that dropped here and there. And then over here, my Vente Cohol, that tree, or that banana tree, that got damaged, but I'll be able to cut those leaves off and it'll keep growing, and in another month you won't even know that anything happened. So I had the generator running early this morning to keep the fridge running, and I had to clear a path to run a cord to the refrigerator, so most of the stuff has been cleared out of my garage except for the figs on the side. And here you can see all of the fig trees that are in pots. They are all fine for the most part. The ones that I kept in the alcove by my front door, they blew over, but they kind of blew over on top of each other, so they supported each other in the blowover. So they all look pretty good, and not concerned about them at all. They will all be just fine. My beautiful, beautiful sable palmetto that was doing great and establishing got partially blown over during the storm. It got probably pushed on a 15 to 20 degree angle. It wasn't looking so good, but I was able to jiggle it and push it back and get it straight and tamp the dirt around it and secure it again. So hopefully it didn't disturb the roots too much and it keeps rooting. And by the grace of God, we won't have another hurricane this year, and it'll continue to root. But it's only the beginning of August. Usually we get our storms in September. And my Celeste Fig Tree and the banana that's holding the bunch, they all held up well, so no damage to report there. Surprisingly, my berry bushes did take a little bit of, there goes Dale. Surprisingly, my berry bushes did take a little bit of damage. The blackberry will have to be fixed a little bit, so will the Tayberry, and the raspberry kind of blew down a bit. So all of these will have to be fixed and straightened back out on this trellis. And my pawpaw area got kind of ripped up. Here you can clearly see this cage around it. The stake got completely obliterated. So I'm going to have to put this shade cloth back on here because the sun's starting to get pretty strong and I can't risk these being scorched. So I'm going to have to put the shade cloth back on, and I'm going to have to fix these stakes later. So I was able to make considerable progress with the cleanup, and I at least got all of my potted fig trees back up, even though they're in completely different order. I still have to reset all of the weed barrier. I still have to clean up my bananas. I still have to pick up my damaged avocado tree. But I'm at least making some progress, and I hope to recover, and hopefully we won't get any more storms for the rest of the year. So I usually try to make positive videos, but this one's pretty much a bummer, but it is what it is, and hopefully the worst has passed for the year. 2020 hasn't been kind to many people this year. So with that, I just want to leave you with a big thank you for watching this video, And if you found it interesting, if you found it helpful, please hit that like button. And if you haven't already subscribed to the channel, please subscribe for future updates and more videos like these. If you're curious about anything that I use in my garden, everything that I use is linked in my Amazon storefront in the video description. Thank you all again for watching, and I hope to see all of you again on the next video.